I am Dr. Kay Fontana, life force coach and grief recovery specialist, and I am deeply familiar with the pain of loss, having experienced many throughout my life. At just 9 years old, I lost my brother to cancer and witnessed my parents' immense grief, which was unbearable. Years later, my mother lost her battle with Alzheimer's, and then my father was diagnosed with cancer and passed away a week after his diagnosis. Most recently, in January 2023, I experienced the devastating loss of my husband and soulmate of 40 years due to multiple health issues. In between were countless other losses, including family members, friends, co-workers, beloved pets, and even finances. However, I turned my pain into my purpose and passion to share strategies to help you get through your darkest days and navigate the complexities of grief. This is the Healing Our Grieving Hearts podcast. Welcome to episode 7, where I will discuss when your world falls apart when you lose a spouse. In today's episode, we'll be embarking on a unique journey as I share my personal narrative, a story that may resonate with some of you. My husband Dave was my life, my soulmate, my best friend for 40 years. We had been through so much together, the ups and downs of life and the joys and the sorrows, but nothing could have prepared me for the morning that changed everything. Dave had been battling multiple health issues for several years. His diabetes combined with Addison's disease, bouts of low blood pressure, a heart attack, frequent falls, and the long-term effects of chemo after his battle with cancer, then in remission, always kept us on our toes. On Friday, January 6, 2023, he had an appointment where the doctor praised him for doing so well. He came out of the office beaming that he hadn't felt that well in years. We were so happy and looked forward to planning a vacation somewhere. The next day was not good, but was typical for him to have good days followed by bad ones. But that night before going to bed, I had no idea it would be the last time I would ever hear his voice. I woke up in the morning to find Dave unresponsive on the couch. It was typical for him to sleep in the living room because he didn't sleep well and was often up several times during the night. This was not the first time he went to the hospital by ambulance, but this time was different. He had never been unconscious. The ambulance came and the paramedics assessed him quickly. His blood sugar was dangerously low, so they administered the appropriate medications and rushed him to the hospital. When I arrived, the doctors immediately put him on life support and ran all the necessary tests. His blood sugar was still extremely low when he arrived. The days that followed were a blur of waiting, hoping, and praying. The neurologist wanted to administer some tests, but it was a challenge between keeping him calm under sedation and reducing sedation that made him agitated and his vitals unstable. After 3 days and still in a coma, they were able to get an MRI to get a better prognosis. After the results came in, the neurologist told me that Dave's chances of regaining consciousness were slim to none. He had been in a prolonged state of hypoglycemia, or low blood sugar, that damaged parts of his brain, the areas that controlled memory, thinking, emotions, consciousness, and others, those that made him Dave. Well, you get the picture. She said we could wait until Saturday to wait for family, but due to his age and his health problems, it was not likely he would ever recover. The decision to remove him from life support weighed heavy on my heart, but I knew that he would have wanted that. I sat with him every day. Saturday arrived and the decision was made. Surrounded by family, I held Dave's hand as we all said our goodbyes after a week on life support. It took him nearly 4 hours to take his last breath. That was January 14th, 2023. The pain of losing him was unbearable, but the following months were even more painful. And so here I am sharing my story with you, a story of love, loss, and resilience, a story of navigating the journey of grief and finding a way to move forward one day at a time. I have always been a strong person. Even my family, friends, and co-workers have told me I was the strongest person they'd ever known. Maybe so, but this was different. I was a mess. I cried more tears than I thought was humanly possible. I didn't care if I lived or died, and the latter seemed like a better option. The only thing that I had in my favor is that I had been Dave's caregiver for years, so there wasn't anything that I couldn't do on my own. I took care of the finances, the yard work, the housework, the cooking, and everything in between. I was already self-sufficient, but the fact that I had just lost my soulmate was beyond comprehension, even though I knew that day would come sooner or later based on his failing health. I was sad, I was lonely, I was full of guilt, but I stayed focused on my mission to prepare for his celebration of life the following month. I didn't want this to be any ordinary celebration of life. I wanted it to tell our story, starting from the first day we met on through the 40 years we had together. I poured my heart and soul into it because I wanted to honor the life that we shared. You see, we were married 2 months after our first date. We were soulmates and destined to be together. We had 3 kids and 8 grandkids, and this needed to be special. I created a music video of pictures from his early childhood to the most recent photos I had of him along with family. I selected a few songs that were meaningful to us. I spent several hours every single day making the video until it was perfect. However, I was still editing it the night before the celebration, which was February 18th. Then a suggestion was made that the family arrive at the celebration in Pink Floyd t-shirts because it was Dave's and our family's favorite band. The word was sent out and we all arrived dressed for the occasion. It was a full house. People were there that I hadn't seen in years. The entire family, classmates from high school, and friends we had known for decades. I spoke for an hour and told humorous stories of our 40 years together. Then family and friends were invited to share their stories about Dave. I particularly wanted them to share the funny ones because he had such a deep sense of humor. I received several comments that it was the best celebration of life that they had ever attended. That was my goal, to make it memorable. After that day, the stark reality set in. My life had changed forever. I had finished compiling a music video that consumed so much of my time and no longer had to edit it. However, I watched it multiple times every day, crying my eyes out each time. Family and friends went back to their normal lives. I stayed in contact with my grieving widow friends. I was surprised when I realized how many I knew. I had left my full-time job over a year ago to take care of Dave, so I didn't have to contend with going back to work. But I knew I had to do something, but didn't know what. I started by organizing all of our photos, our wedding album, and items that I had at his celebration, and put them in some plastic containers to keep everything safe. In the process, I stumbled upon a collection of small videotapes from our vacations and decided to get them transferred to a flash drive at a video processing shop. It was such a blessing to discover them, especially since they featured his narrations from our travels. He had the most beautiful, deep radio voice that landed him guest spots on classic rock radio stations. While he made a few cameo appearances in some of the vacation clips, he was mostly the one behind the camera. Once I had all the tapes converted, I put together a compilation video with the highlights from all of them, just so I could listen to his beautiful voice. I knew I had to get back to being productive and finding my way in the world, whether it was working on my coaching business or teaching Qigong, but nothing felt right yet. I spent the last 6 years taking care of Dave after his cancer diagnosis, which was the beginning of his frequent hospital visits. I had forgotten what it was like to be me, so I felt stuck and was still grieving. But I knew I had to find myself again. Yet an additional desire lingered with me, to have a final conversation with Dave. A close friend who had lost her husband recommended visiting a psychic medium. She shared her own comforting experience. Intrigued, I made the decision to give it a try, wanting to connect with him. I'm not advocating for everyone to seek out a medium, as caution is paramount when choosing one. Luckily, I crossed paths with a truly gifted individual with whom I immediately resonated. While I consider myself intuitive and adept at reading people, I've been misled before. Fortunately, this instance was not one of those times. The accuracy of her reading was uncanny, and I unmistakably felt his presence, a sense that had become somewhat familiar since his passing. I frequently conversed with him and wrote letters to him daily in my journal, so feeling his presence wasn't out of the ordinary. She revealed intimate details that only he and I shared, details that couldn't have been gathered from social media or any other source. Convinced that she possessed genuine abilities, I returned for a second session. Leaving each session, a sense of peace washed over me, reassured that all would eventually fall into place, with the comforting thought that he was reunited with his high school best friend, Roger, with whom he shared an unbreakable bond. Yet I recognized the necessity of seeking out activities distinct from those shared with Dave. I understood the importance of forging my own path, transitioning into what many term as the new normal. What that entailed remained ambiguous, but I held faith that I would have clarity in due time. I caught wind of a chance to return to work on a part-time basis. The office manager at my church was stepping down due to health concerns, and I felt at ease with the idea of taking over. It was something I desired to do if I should ever retire. This role not only allowed me to contribute to the church community, but also promised a deep dive into spiritual practices and traditions that would serve as a source of comfort for me on a daily basis. You see, my minister lost her husband the previous year, so we had a lot in common. The discussion unfolded in March, and by April, I had embarked on this new chapter, one of divine right timing. A sense of incompleteness still lingered with me. While scrolling through Facebook one day, a photo caught my eye. A group of my former firefighter and paramedic friends and coworkers posing next to their Harleys. They had just returned from a ride supporting the Arizona Fallen Hero Memorial Riders, an initiative dedicated to honoring and commemorating fallen heroes in various fields like the military, law enforcement, firefighters, and emergency medical services. As a former paramedic and volunteer firefighter, the cause deeply resonated with me, stirring an immediate fascination and desire to get involved. The only hitch? I didn't own a motorcycle and had zero experience riding one except for being a teenage passenger on my uncle's bike many moons ago. Undoubtedly, the thought of joining this endeavor seemed like one of my wildest notions yet. Nonetheless, I threw it out to the universe and was met with an overwhelming response from my Facebook friends, all echoing how incredible an experience it would be and to go for it. And so, come April, I took the plunge and purchased a Harley. By May, I had completed my motorcycle training, securing my license soon after. My heart was taken by a beautiful white Heritage Softail Classic. Riding had never been on Dave's radar, which offered me a new avenue to explore without stirring up sad memories. The experience has been an absolute joy, except for the scorching summers in the Phoenix area. The extreme heat tends to put a damper on things, a common sentiment around these parts during the summertime, evident by the dwindling population as snowbirds seek cooler climates. As June drew to a close, a friend extended an invitation for me to join him at the 10-year anniversary memorial, honoring the 19 Granite Mountain hotshots who tragically perished in the Yarnell, Arizona fire on June 30th, 2013. Feeling a strong sense of calling, I saw this as a worthwhile trip. The memorial unfolded at Courthouse Square in Prescott, Arizona, drawing a crowd of thousands in emergency vehicles from across the state. Amidst the hauntingly beautiful melodies of the bagpipes, the solemn honor guard, and the poignant speeches, we found a spot on the grass to pay our respects. The event proved to be moving, with speakers delivering powerful messages. Yet one individual's words resonated profoundly with me. A 16-year-old young man who had lost his father in the Yarnell fire when he was just 6. Before leaving for duty that fateful day, the boy's father had entrusted him with being the man of the house during his absence. The depth and wisdom in this young man's message were profound. How he had grown to be so remarkably insightful after enduring such a heartbreaking experience at a tender age of 6. His words echoed with resilience and hope. Choose joy. Silent tears streamed down my face, marking another profound shift in my life. The drive home from Prescott that evening was filled with contemplation, the young man's speech lingering persistently in my mind. In fact, its impact stayed with me long after the event. I sensed a personal message within those words, one that demanded introspection to unravel its significance. Before long, clarity emerged. I realized that my path forward involving assisting others in navigating their grief. This newfound purpose felt like a calling, a mission I was destined to fill. It became unmistakably clear to me this was not a choice, but a steadfast commitment. It was non-negotiable. At that point, I had been serving as a grief recovery specialist for 8.5 years. Yet in the last year or so, I had stepped away from actively working in the field due to my husband's health struggles. Nevertheless, my connection to this role ran deep within me. It was a fundamental aspect of my identity, and I couldn't simply let it go. That week, I contacted the Grief Recovery Institute to understand the steps required for renewing my certification. I knew that if I were to travel down this path of helping others in their grieving process, I needed to prioritize my own healing. So, I reached into my proverbial toolbox and began the process of self-care. I took the action steps outlined in the grief recovery method and supplemented my healing journey with practices from my life force coaching. Subsequently, Healing Our Grieving Hearts was established, an entity that blossomed from the depths of my personal tragedy. As I've shared in prior podcasts, the journey through grief is deeply individual and intricate. I'm not advocating for everyone to take the same path I have, whether buying a Harley or seeking a psychic medium. Rather, I urge you to remain attuned to the subtle messages and clues guiding you on your unique journey through loss. Each challenge or setback we face carries distinct messages tailored to our individual experiences. It's paramount that we stay receptive to these messages. Undeniably, losing my husband ranks as the most difficult period in my life. Yet, within that sorrow was a profound gift. By following the signs and guidance presented to me, a transformative path unfolded. Divine wisdom steered my course, and it all started with a photo I saw on Facebook, which got the wheels in motion. Anchored in a deep spiritual faith, I rely on my trust in God that divine forces are guiding me forward, not backward. This unwavering faith has been my beacon, preventing me from falling into deep depression. Today, I hope my story helps you on your journey through grief. My aim is to kindle inspiration and instill hope that you too, from the words of a wise 16-year-old, will choose joy and your new normal with gratitude. The mission of Healing Our Grieving Hearts is to provide holistic healing by guiding individuals through the process of grief recovery, discovering their purpose, and integrating energy healing and spiritual support for complete well-being. For more information on how to benefit from grief healing modalities that I offer, go to my website at www.healingourgrievinghearts.com, where you can also schedule a complimentary grief breakthrough session. To follow me on Facebook, go to Healing Our Grieving Hearts. Thank you for listening to this episode of Healing Our Grieving Hearts podcast. Remember, you are not alone in your grief, and your experiences and emotions are valid. Join me next Saturday at 10 a.m. Arizona time as we continue to explore the human experience and how to honor your loved one even after the funeral is over. Until then, be kind to yourself.